My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 41 years old. I live in a modest two-story house in West Ashley, just outside Charleston, South Carolina, with my wife Renee, who teaches third grade, and our two boys, who are 11 and 14, and currently locked in an ongoing dispute about whose turn it is to mow the lawn that has somehow lasted 3 weeks longer than the actual grass-growing season requires. I've been a firefighter for 16 years, the last 9 of them with Engine Company 14, working out of a station house on the edge of downtown Charleston that handles a mix of historic district calls and the kind of routine emergencies that make up most of any firefighter's actual career. Far less dramatic day-to-day than what people imagine, and far more dangerous on the nights it isn't routine than most people ever have to think about. I don't talk about the job much at home. Renee knows the broad shape of it, and the boys know I fight fires, in the simplified way kids understand their parents' work. But I have always tried to keep the specific weight of certain nights from following me through the front door. It's not always possible, but I try. The night in question was a Tuesday in January, cold enough that the water from our hoses iced on the sidewalk within minutes, which is its own particular hazard that has nothing to do with flame and everything to do with footing. The call came in around 11:40 p.m., a townhouse fire on a quiet residential street in the historic district, originating, as we later determined, from a space heater left too close to a curtain in a second-floor bedroom. By the time Engine 14 arrived, the second floor was fully involved, and the fire had begun moving toward the stairwell, which is the specific kind of fire that turns a building from survivable to lethal in a matter of minutes, because a compromised stairwell means there may not be a way out by the time you reach whoever's still inside. Dispatch had a report of one resident still on scene. I went in with my partner that night, a younger firefighter named Diaz, who's been with the company about 4 years, and we found her on the second-floor landing. A woman, mid-40s at the time, though she would later turn out to be 51, in night clothes, disoriented from smoke inhalation, attempting to navigate a hallway that had already gone mostly dark with smoke. I want to be honest that, in the moment, I did not know her name, did not know anything about her, and did not think about anything beyond the specific, narrow physical problem in front of me. Get her down 3 flights of compromised stairwell before either of us lost consciousness from the smoke we were both already breathing too much of. She was not unconscious, not entirely, but she was close to it, the kind of half-aware state where a person can still grip but cannot fully reason. I got my arm under her, told her to hold on to my collar, and she did, with a grip that surprised me given how far gone she otherwise seemed. I carried her down those 3 flights the way I have carried people before, focused entirely on the count of stairs and the sound of the structure around us, which, by the bottom flight, had started making the specific groaning sound that tells you the building doesn't have much longer left in its current shape. We got out. She was treated on scene, transported to MUSC for smoke inhalation and minor burns to one forearm, and made what the hospital later confirmed was a full recovery. I filed my incident report, which included her name, Vivian Ashford-Cole, pulled from the responding paramedics' documentation, and I did not think about her again in any specific way for the next several weeks, because that is, frankly, how the job works. You carry dozens of people out of dozens of situations over a career. Most of them remain to you a name on an incident report and nothing more. This is not coldness. It's simply the only way the work remains sustainable over 16 years. I learned later who Vivian Ashford-Cole actually was. She was, it turned out, a prominent figure in Charleston's philanthropic and social circles, the kind of person whose name appeared regularly in the society pages of the local magazine, married to a man who owned several commercial properties downtown, and active on the boards of at least 3 nonprofits, including, as it happened, the Charleston Firefighters Benevolent Fund, the charity organization that hosted an annual gala honoring the department. This is how I ended up at the gala 3 weeks after the fire, not because of any connection to Vivian Ashford-Cole specifically, but because Engine Company 14 was receiving a service commendation that year, and the department asked several of us to attend in dress uniform, or, in my case, the one good suit I own, which I had worn to exactly 4 weddings and 1 funeral prior to that night. The gala was held at a restored mansion downtown, the kind of venue with crystal chandeliers and a string quartet, and the specific ambient hum of a room full of people who have never had to calculate whether they can afford the appetizer. Renee came with me, wearing a dress she'd borrowed from her sister for the occasion, and we stood near the edge of the room for the first hour, eating considerably more of the past appetizers than was probably dignified, because neither of us had eaten dinner beforehand. I saw Vivian Ashford-Cole for the first time since the fire around 9 o'clock, near the dessert table, on the arm of a city councilman I recognized from local news coverage. She looked entirely recovered, composed, elegant. The small bandage that had been visible on her forearm in the hospital photo I'd glimpsed in a follow-up news segment, now apparently healed, or covered well enough not to show. I did not approach her. I want to be clear about that, because what happened next was not something I provoked or invited. I was simply standing near the dessert table, in my one good suit, holding a small plate with a piece of cake on it, when she and the councilman walked past on their way to the bar. She glanced at me, the brief, assessing glance people give a stranger in a room, and said something to the councilman that I was apparently meant to hear, or perhaps was simply not meant to be considered capable of hearing and processing because she didn't lower her voice particularly. "Don't worry about him," she said, with a small dismissive gesture in my direction. "He's with the catering staff." The councilman didn't even look at me directly. They continued toward the bar. I want to describe what I felt in that moment as precisely as I can, because I think precision matters more than drama here. I did not feel rage. I felt something quieter and, in its way, more familiar. The specific, recognizable sensation of being looked at and seen as a function rather than a person. It is not a new feeling for a man in my line of work, or for men in most of the lines of work this kind of story tends to be about. I have been mistaken for plenty of things in plenty of rooms. I have learned not to let it cost me anything internally that I'm not willing to spend. Renee, standing beside me, had heard it too. She looked at me with an expression that was half outrage on my behalf and half barely suppressed disbelief. "She has no idea who you are," Renee said quietly. "No," I agreed. "She doesn't." I did not correct her. I want to be honest about why, because I think the reason matters. It would have been easy enough. I could have said simply, "Actually, I'm the firefighter who carried you out of your townhouse 3 weeks ago." It would have been true, and it would likely have produced an immediate, mortified apology. But I have found, over 16 years, that correcting someone's mistaken assumption about you in the exact moment they've made it rarely produces anything other than their embarrassment. And their embarrassment was never the thing I was after. I finished my cake. Renee and I left a little after 10. I did not expect to see Vivian Ashford-Cole again under any circumstances that mattered. I assumed the gala had been the entire arc of whatever brief, accidental overlap our lives were going to have. 3 days later, my company received a call to a 4-story commercial building downtown. An electrical fire that had started in a server room on the 2nd floor of an office building and was spreading through the wall cavities faster than the building's outdated suppression system could contain. By the time we arrived, the building had been evacuated. Mostly. Except for a report of one person possibly still on the 4th floor. A tenant who worked late, and whose office assistant believed she hadn't made it out before the alarm cleared the building. I want to be honest that I did not know, climbing those stairs in full gear with Diaz behind me, whose office it was. I knew only the floor, the approximate location, and the diminishing window of time before the structural situation made the 4th floor unreachable. We found her in a corner office, disoriented from smoke, having apparently been on a phone call loud enough that she hadn't heard the alarm clearly through a closed door, then lost precious minutes trying to locate an exit route that the smoke had already begun obscuring. It was Vivian Ashford-Cole. I recognized her immediately, the way you recognize someone whose face you've seen in 2 very different contexts within a short span of time. She did not recognize me. Could not have, given the mask and gear, given that she had not, in any meaningful sense, looked at me as a specific person 3 weeks earlier either. I got her out the same way I'd gotten her out of the townhouse. Controlled, methodical, focused on the count of stairs rather than on anything else. Including, deliberately, including any thought about the gala or the dessert table, or the sentence about catering staff. There is no room in that kind of work for resentment. The job does not care what someone said to you 3 weeks ago. The job only cares whether the person in front of you gets out. We got her out. She was treated on scene for smoke inhalation, considerably milder this time, and within an hour was sitting in the back of an ambulance with a blanket around her shoulders. Coherent enough to talk when I came over to confirm some details for my report. I had my mask off by then. She looked at me. Really looked. The way you look at someone when your mind is trying to solve a puzzle it doesn't yet have enough pieces for. And something shifted in her expression. You, she said slowly. You were at the gala 3 weeks ago, near the dessert table. I was, I said. She was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of someone doing rapid, uncomfortable arithmetic. You're a firefighter. 16 years, I said. Engine company 14. I watched the realization complete itself fully on her face. Not just that I was a firefighter, not just that I had been at her gala in that capacity, rather than the one she'd assumed, but the specific, vertiginous recognition of exactly which fire, exactly which night, exactly whose collar her hand had gripped on the way down 3 flights of smoke-filled stairs in January. Oh my God, she said quietly. It was you. In January. You're the one who… She stopped. Her hand came up to her mouth. I am, I said, without any particular emphasis. I was not trying to make the moment larger than it needed to be. I was answering a question. She sat there in the back of that ambulance, blanket around her shoulders, and I watched a woman who had built, by all accounts, a fairly comfortable habit of moving through rooms without examining who occupied the edges of them, confront the specific fact that the edge of one particular room had, twice now, been the exact place her survival depended on. I said you were with the catering staff, she said. Her voice had lost all of its earlier composure. At the gala. I said that. About you. You did, I said. I am so sorry. There isn't a version of an apology that actually covers this. You don't owe me an elaborate one, I said. I wasn't offended in the way you might think. I've been mistaken for plenty of things by plenty of people. It comes with wearing a suit that doesn't quite fit a room. That's not the point, she said. And there was something raw in her voice that hadn't been there in the version of her I'd glimpsed across a gala floor. The point is, I looked at a man and decided, instantly, without a single piece of actual information, that he didn't belong in a room I was standing in. And it turns out, that man had already saved my life once, and was about to do it again, and I never once thought to ask his name. I didn't say anything to that. I let her sit with it, because I have learned that the moments people arrive at this kind of recognition on their own tend to matter more than anything I could say to hurry them there. What's your name? She asked. Your actual name. I want to know it properly this time. Marcus Webb, I said. Marcus, she repeated, like she was making sure it would stay with her this time. I would like to come to the station house, if that's allowed. Not for a photo, not for the magazine. I don't want this turned into a story I tell at dinner parties about my own enlightenment. I just want to say thank you to the actual person, properly, once I'm not covered in soot and adrenaline. That would be fine, I said. We're usually around. She came the following week, on a Tuesday afternoon when the company was mostly between calls. And she did exactly what she'd said she would. No photographer, no entourage, just a quiet conversation in the station house kitchen over coffee that Diaz made too strong, the way he always does. She asked about the job. She asked about the January fire, what she'd been like, whether I remembered details she herself couldn't recall from the smoke and the fear. She asked about my family, my boys, the lawn mowing dispute, which made her laugh for the first time since I'd met her in any context. Before she left, she asked if the Benevolent Fund's Gala Committee could feature the department's actual rescue work more prominently next year. Not as decoration, she said, but as the actual point of the evening, the thing the whole room was supposedly there to honor. I told her that sounded like a good idea. She left. I went back to checking equipment with Diaz, the way the afternoon required, and I thought, briefly, about the specific shape of the lesson and what had happened. Not a dramatic reversal, not a public reckoning, just one woman quietly recalculating who deserved her attention in a room. 3 weeks too late to undo the first mistake, but in time, perhaps, to stop making it. I don't need the world to notice the people standing at the edges of rooms. I've made peace with the edges a long time ago. But I'll admit, there was something quietly satisfying in watching someone learn, all on her own, what it costs to decide who matters before you've bothered to find out. If you've ever been looked past in a room you had every right to stand in, leave a comment below. I read every one. And if you know someone who does the work that gets noticed only in emergencies, thank them properly. on an ordinary day, before you ever need them again. See you in the next one!